All right, 17. Is it 17? Yes. 17 of Teves, very short. This pertains, too bad we didn't, well, it's Hashgacha Pratas. This is about Nittelnacht, the Xmas Eve. And the reason for not studying Torah that night, the Frierdiker Rebbe learned from the Rebbe Rashab, his father, is to avoid adding vitality. Vitality is chayos. So from this we learn a positive, that learning Torah adds chayos, increases vitality throughout the entire, I call it cosmos, but you know what I mean, right? From the Ein Sof itself all the way down. And on that night, since the Klippos are dancing, it's their day, that vitality could be falling into them, and we don't want to give chayos to the Klippos. My father once said, it's interesting, those diligent students who begrudge those 8 hours and cannot tear themselves away from study, I'm not fond of them. This abstaining from study applies only until midnight. Midnight, apparently, the daylight brings, so the power of darkness is waning. Okay? When the Temet will do Shabbos also, when the Temet said he was a boy and learned the passage, Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. His teacher translated, according to the Baal HaTurim commentary, our father Yaakov lived his 17 best years in Egypt. When he returned home from Cheder, he asked his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, how can it be that our father Yaakov, the elect of the patriarchs, should have all the best, as the best year of his life, the 17 years that he lived in Egypt, the land of corruption? The Alter Rebbe answered, it is written, and Yehuda he sent before him to Yosef to give instructions for Goshen. Okay, now there's a drush, there's a few drushim hidden here. Yehuda is the union of Hoid, Yud Hoid, which he sent down into Egypt, this capacity for given overness, which is Yehuda, who in last week's parsha gives himself over to Yosef, and Yosef, of course, means to add, Hoisef, to add. So, Yehudi sent before him to Yosef to give instructions for Goshen. In other words, this was an opportunity for Yaakov Avinu to bring light into the darkness, which is the ultimate, as we've learned and will continue to learn in our Devoid of Tzaddik. So this is an ultimate opportunity. The Midrash states, and Rashi quotes this, Reb Nehemiah said, to establish a house of study so Torah would be there and the tribes would study Torah. This is very, interestingly enough, connected to the previous one. The Torah gives chayas. And here the Torah is going to give chayas into the darkest place of the earth, which is Mitzrayim. And therefore, this is an example of turning darkness into light. So give instructions for Goshen means in a deeper sense. When one learns Torah, he comes closer to the Almighty. May he be blessed. So even in Egypt, it was true to say, Vayechi, he lived, because he brought chayas of Torah into the darkness. And that's our job. The tzaddik within us, Amach Kulam Tzaddikim. But at the same time, there are particular types of people who really are tzaddikim in two levels that we are learning about. The tzaddik Gomer, who's completely evil, who's completely good, that any trace of negativity has been totally transformed and elevated, and the tzaddik she'ena Gomer. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today, if I'm not mistaken. Page 156 in this book, 17th of Teves. We'll do 17 and 18. And in this book, the Yamorim, the top of page 30. Okay, so we're speaking about the Tzaddik Gomer. who's called Bnei Aliyah. Remember? The Zohar called the Tzaddik Gomer the Bnei Aliyah. And in two senses. One, we spoke about yesterday, when someone asked, I don't remember whom, what's the avoida of a tzaddik after, if he's a tzaddik gomer, and everything's done, so to speak. So he said that he has in the service, he has an avoida, which we didn't name it. It's named in Kabbalah and Chassidus as leyachad yechudim, to create greater levels of unity all the way up. But his also avoida is to transform the world. Not that he rises all the way up, but he raises the world all the way up. He transforms darkness into light. So,
Avi, yeah. Let's make the refuah shlemas.
Oh, thank you. I didn't. Go ahead.
I'll do Yehudas Golda Bas Eliza Hano and Sivia Chaya Bas Leah Masha and Rachel Bas Eliza and Barak Benyamin Ben Rachel Blima.
They all should have refuah shlema b'korev.
And Devorah Rachel Bat Miriam Chava.
Amen. Thanks for reminding me. The Oid, top of page 30. The Oid, in addition to why they're called Bnei Aliyah on the previous page, the children of elevation who elevate, the Kroim B'lei Mimnei, because Shigam, this is a Tzaddik Gomer, right? Mimnei Shigam Avidosam B'Bechinas V'Asik Toiv, because their service in the level of Asik Toiv, the Kiyim HaTorah V'Amitzvos El Mitzvotseha, in terms of fulfilling the Torah and her mitzvahs, Huletzorech Gaveya, it's for the sake of the Most High, B'nai Aliyah, for the sake of the Most High, which is Hashem Himself. Umayla Mayla Ad Roima Mailas, and this goes up to the highest levels. In other places in Chassidus that demarcates certain levels, for instance, Atzilus, right? It goes up from, let me just make it simple. There are myriad, infinite number of steps here. But from Olam Hazeh, up to Olam Atzilus. From Olam Atzilus to just before the Tzimtzum, just after the Tzimtzum. From just after the Tzimtzum to before the Tzimtzum. And before the Tzimtzum into Atzmus itself. I know these are not necessarily meaningful in terms of what's the quality of them. We can discuss that somewhere else, and they aren't. It's discussed quite at length in Chassidus. But anyway, to give a sense that there are levels and levels and levels. Ad infinitum. Ad reim hamaylis, to the highest of levels, which touches on the Ein Sof itself. So that's one interpretation, understanding of Bnei Aliyah. And they're not doing it to cling to Hashem, bilvad. In other words, that they have a desire to be close to Hashem. No, this is, remember, Ava Kamman, where it's not the love of fire, of yearning, which is important, of course, and we all need to cultivate that. But it's the fire, it's the calmness. It's not a fire, it's the Ava Kamman, like water. So it's not, as for Shalom, to say their self-interest at all, to cling to Hashem. To satisfy the parchedness of their soul, which thirsts for Hashem. It's not for that. As is written about that is advice to a person. Anyone who is thirsty should go to the water, meaning the waters of Torah. But this is not why this is not the avoid of a tzaddik gomer. A tzaddik gomer has zero self-interest and only the interest of the Gaveya, the one who is the Most High. Is written in another place. Has explained.
Doesn't it say Levad? It's not that interest only.
Huh? It's not just that's not his interest. That is not his interest.
Doesn't it say Levad?
Right, Bilvad.
It's
not his interest only to, yeah.
So
you're saying that he does on the side have some interest in this?
It's not only that, it has some of that, and
the Tzaddik Gomer the current Tzaddik Gomer has zero interest in himself. And only Belvad, only L'Ravas Timon Nafshu Tzimon Hashem.
That's where the comma is. Okay.
That's where the
I don't
comma
have the
goes.
text in front of me.
Right.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Mashikosav, Okay, we said that if a person is thirsty, but not the tzaddik gomer, he's not thirsty. He's doing this for the sake of the gavoya. But if you're thirsty, go to water. Ella, but what is it? The pirosho b'tikunim, as it explained in the tikunim. Okay, here's how the Zohar explains the tzaddik gomer. Ezer hu chassid, who is a kind person? Hamischatsid im koinoi delay. It doesn't say delay here, but it says it in other places. Im koinoi. He does chesed with his creator. His behavior is, what does my creator want? That's what I'll do. Im kandale. Kandale means his nest, literally. But here it means his source. He does kindness with his source. He's given over totally to what the creator wants from him. And what does the creator want from him and from all of us? To unite the Holy One, blessed be He, the levels of holiness, which are makif, with the Shekhinah, which is imminent, to bring Kedusha down into this world, in the lower worlds. Meshikoseh B'Raya Mehemna is written in the section of the Zohar called B'Raya Mehemna, Pirish in Parshas Tetzei, Kibora de Stadul Bosar Avoy V'Yemohe, like a child who runs after his father and mother. The Rachilim Yaisim Mirgamei. This is the point. He loves the father and the mother more than himself. He will give himself away, more than himself and more than his own life. He loves him. He loves them more than himself, more than his own nefesh, more than his own ruach, more than his own neshama. And he will give himself away to die on behalf of his parents. To redeem them in a situation where he has to give up his life for them. That's what he will do, because he's only about the other and nothing about himself. The other here meaning God, and in our metaphor, the parents. Now the Alter Rebbe says in a bracket, "V'shneihem oilim b'kone echad." Both. What are the both? There's raising up the lower, and there's hamshachas down here below, bringing drawings down, illuminations down here below. He says, really, these two things are two sides of the same coin. That's the way that you can take Shnehem Oilim Bekana Echad. They go up in one kana, in one form. That it's two sides of the same coin. Through the separations and the rectifications that he does down here below, this is transforming darkness into light. Mayin Nukvin, he raises up the lower worlds, the feminine waters, Benasim Yechudim Elyoinim, and it makes their unities up above, and this is why it's one and the same, because that raising up from below to above causes a turnaround, Lahorid Mayin Duchurin, to bring the masculine waters down. Shehem Heim Meimei Chasodim. So the masculine waters are called waters of kindness. Shebechol misvah u'misvah merarach mitzvahs aseh shekulan heim b'chasodim and mayim dechurim, because all the mitzvahs is joining mitzvahs lashon joining, savta v'chibur, connecting, and what are we doing? We're raising up to connect the bottom with the top, and bring down the top into the bottom. So he says that aspect of bringing the top into the bottom is the masculine, right? They're all chasadim, mean they're all extensions, right? The mitzvahs aseh, we go out and we do things with them. That's called mayim duchrim, extending oneself. Or mayim duchrim, it's called mayim duchrim. Dahainu hamshachas kedushas alakusi is borach melamayla lamata. That's drawing down the holiness of God Himself into from above to below, to be enclosed in the lower worlds, as is written in another place. So I'm going to stop here because we're going to now do Shabbos. We'll continue with Shabbos. Just stop for a moment. Questions? Comments? Coffee? Okay. So we finished with the tzaddik. Tzaddik she'ena gomer. Remember, both tzaddikim, the Ra never enters their consciousness whatsoever. One has totally, the gomer has completely transformed it, taken the dark energies and elicited from it the intense light that's buried within it. The other, it's just so mute, so minuscule that it has no presence in his consciousness at all, though it may still be there. Behaviorally, you're not going to see any difference. It's only he who knows or she who knows whether they're a tzaddik gomer or they are a tzaddik she'ena gomer. Now, on the other side, v'zeh u'mezeh, right? We've come upon this pasuk a lot of times. Hashem has created this opposite this. Kedusha, opposite Sitra Achra. Rasha v'toivlai. So we have now the Rasha to deal with. And we have two kinds of Rasha, two kinds of evil people. Evilness in people. Not evil people. Two kinds of evilness in people. There's a Rasha v'toivlai. There's a Rasha who has goodness to him, meaning that the goodness, everybody has goodness to him. Let's get this straight. There's the tzaddik in every single person, right? Amach kulam tzaddikim. But we're talking here in terms of operationally. What's going on operationally? What's happening inside the person? So what's happening in the person we're calling the Rasha v'toivlai, a Rasha to whom is good. And he is, or she, is opposite, la'umas tzaddik v'ralai. So Rasha v'toivlai, mixture, and tzaddik v'ralai, also a mixture. Dahainu, so what's it mean, Rasha v'toivlai? That the good, which is in his godly soul, and in his brain, and in the right side of the heart, the good is subjugated to the evil. Which comes from the klippa, as we learned earlier, from the left side of the heart. Now, just like the tzaddik she'ena gomer has many, many different levels in terms of how small, how minuscule the evil is, so the Rasha, the toivlai, also has many, many levels. It's divided. It's said. It goes in many different levels. To what extent there's a bittul, a nullification. To what extent the good is nullified to the evil, right? In the tzaddik, it was the other way around. The evil nullified to the good. In the Rasha, to what extent is the evil a toiv l'ra? To what extent is the goodness nullified to the evil? There's a kind of a person where that subservience of the evil to the good is very, very little. Yaf gam zois, and nevertheless, in betamidas, but it's not all the time. The good is not always subjugated to the evil. Bolei todar, and not always. Leperokim keruvim, very often. Elaleitim rehoikim, it could be very far. Every once in a while, the good is subject to the evil, and he's, in other words, mostly good and not so bad. Only a little bit. This gaver hara, does the evil show itself and strengthen itself ala toyib, and conquer the small city, which is the person, hu haguf, the body of the person. So there's that kind of a tzaddik Rasha v'toivlai, where the evil is only popping up every once in a while. Achlei kula, but not all the time. Elamikat sosei levad, just a little bit. The Ra overtakes him just a little bit. She is sore and very once in a while he turns to listen to what he hears from the voice of evil. The and every once in a while he or she becomes a chariot to carry and to invest himself or herself in the evil. It could be echad mishlosh. Oh, excuse me. The evil every once in a while. The evil becomes invested only once in a while in the shlosh levusheha, now in that person's thought, speech, and deed. The hainu, what's it mean? He explains now the three levushim. Every once in a while, this is a rush of a toivloi, an evil person who has good, and this is a highly functioning person where only the evil comes once in a while to be enclosed b'maisa, in the person's deed, levad. Last is averis kalas, that he does very light sins, v'lechamuras, and not serious sins, chas v'sholem. Oi, that's deed, or it could be once in a while the evil could be invested in his speech, levad. The davar avik lashon hora, meaning he's talking, he's getting us a very refined Russia, right? A very refined Russia v'toivloi, a very refined evil person, and the good is to him, because the goodness, even he just doesn't even. And once in a while, he'll speak not even lashon hora, but just the dust of lashon hora, something which leads to lashon hora, velitznus, or scoffing, or making fun of something, or anything like this. Oi, that's speech, or machshava. A person can be a Russia v'toivloi once in a while, very once in a while, something negative, which negative meaning, again, not the side of Kedusha, rises up in front of him. Yehudi Avera, a thought of doing an Avera. Akoshim Avera, which Chazal say, thoughts of doing Avera are worse than actually doing them. What perspective does that mean? Because it's making Tuma an inner garment, a deeper garment, which is the garment of thought. You don't get punished for thinking because we don't know what you're thinking, but you're polluting a deeper garment, which is thought and action. And even if you're not thinking about this sin to actually do it, you're just having a passing thought about a relationship between a man and a woman, and which that passing thought is actually a warning that the Torah gives. It's a pasuk in Devorim. Be very, very careful. Nishmarta, hold yourself back, guard yourself from something evil, which he applies here to even a thought of doing an avera, or a thought even of the avera, even if it's not your thought to do it. Excuse me. That you shouldn't have these thoughts, passing thoughts anytime. Or here's another example of a rush of a toivloi. There's a proper time, there's a fit time, it's been delivered to him, a couple of minutes of free time, la'asik b'Torah, to occupy himself or herself in Torah, and he turns or she turns her heart to something else. And we learned in Aris, in Avos chapter 3, Mishnah 4, Haniyah balayla, one who wakes up during the night, and instead of using that wake-up opportunity to engage in something of Kedusha, talking here particularly about learning, he turns his heart away. And it says about that a person who does that is chayev nafshoy, is obligated with his life. And this is very refined levels, right? Any one of these kind of levels of ra, of evil being present, anything like that, nikra rasha, the esahu, the person is called a rasha in that time. Because at that moment, even second, these levels, and these are very refined, you see, right? Very refined levels even of evil are part of the garments of his thought, speech, or deed in his body. And are bringing about a sin, and are polluting him, making the person tameh. I mean, not halachically tameh, but they're polluting his consciousness. One is if not polluting his actions, they're polluting his consciousness, because he has or she has some awareness of it, and even more than that, maybe a thought to do it, or maybe does it. A moment of anger. Rosh Hashanah, right? A moment of anger. Losing it. Getting triggered into doing something that's not Kedusha. Rosh Hashanah happens to most of us sometime, at least. This, by the way, is the general category of people, because most people are like this, and they have not yet mastered, me, have not yet mastered this, that I can 100% say that I'm only moving according to the Yetzer Tov. We're in a battle, and we're going to see the Beinoni, which is we are all really the book can say this book is about moving from the Rosh Hashanah state, which is the ordinary state, into a Beinoni state, which is dealing with that evil in a different way than what's here on the page that we're talking about. In other words, never ever capitulating to it, but nevertheless being aware of it and not capitulating to it. But the Rosh Hashanah capitulates in some even very refined respect. And after this little capitulation, right, even a thought, right, the good comes out, which is in his godly soul, and a Rosh Hashanah has regret, from Hashem, and asks for forgiveness from Hashem. The Hashem yislach loy, and Hashem will forgive him. That's a promise. That's the operating principle. He who comes to be purified will be purified. Im shabbat teshuva haroi, as long as you come with a proper level of shuva, which will be discussed at length in a Geras HaTshuva, that section of Tanya. As long as you come with a proper level of shuva, al pi etzes chachmeinu zacharinu lebrucha, according to the advice of our sages, b'sholos chaluki kapora, in regarding the three kinds of kapora. And the three kinds have, very simply, one who transgresses a positive mitzvah, one who transgresses a negative mitzvah, and one who transgresses a mitzvah whose punishment is chorus, to be cut off. These three things will be discussed at length in a Geras HaTshuva. Nevertheless, if you come with shuva, you will be forgiven. The shuva and come al pi etzes hachamenu zal b'shloisha haluki kapora. The three kinds of kapora. Shoher Rav Shmuel Dorish boy kamashikos Rav Shmuel in the Gemara explicated these three kinds of shuva, as is written in a Machamarcha, which is in the Geras HaTshuva. Okay, so that's the Rosh Hashanah. So we got one other category before the Beinoni, the Rosh Hashanah. He corresponds to the Tzaddik V'Toivloi, the opposite, total opposite. All good, all bad. What's that mean? The evil strengthens itself more, and permeates, embeds itself, clothes itself in all three garments of the soul, of evil, and causes that person to sin with much deeper, more severe sins, and very often, more often. But once in a while, right, he regrets. Once in a while. And there comes Yehudim Shuva, from the aspect of good which is in his soul, which we have to keep, please, remembering this, that even a Rosh Hashanah, every human being has good in his soul, because every human being and everything has existence only because of the effusions of Kedusha, which would bring it into being. So even the Rosh Hashanah has Toiv Shebenafshe, Shemizgaber Ketzatz Min Tayim, which once in a while comes up to the surface, that good. But it's not strong enough to overpower the evil, to make him separate from sin. Once in a while, that person has a thought, a passing thought, a feeling of wanting to be different, wanting to transform himself or herself into a person who does good. But in the Rosh Hashanah, he can't do it. I mean, this reminds me very much of a particular person I know, but in a general thing, who happens to be a drug addict. And once in a while, I mean, he comes to me and he says, Avi, I really, really want to change, but I just don't have a handle on it. Now, that's what we're talking about. He's captured by the evil, though there are Yehurim, small thoughts of goodness once in a while, but he can't figure out a way out. So he's embedded in the Ra and can't separate from his sins, that he can actually subjugate and give himself over to the good and be strong. And this our sages have said, that even the Rosh Hashanah, all Rishoyim are full of regret. Now, that's even an evil for the evil person, but what is one who's really in the grasp of evil? One who's never ever has any regret, and there never ever arises in that person any thoughts of shuva. And this one, I don't know anybody like this. Nikra Rasha Barala. That's the real category of the Rasha Barala. Is completely overcome with evil. The evil is the only thing that remains inside him. Now again, he can't lose the tzidkis, right? But it's completely buried and obscured. It never, just like the tzaddik, the toivloi, never ever has any kind of presence of evil. This Rashi Vata never has any revealed presence of good. Because the evil is so strong over the goodness, it departs from within him, meaning it's not in any part of his consciousness whatsoever. The oimid bibichinus makib is there, because as I said before, it has to be there, the good, the spark of godliness, but it's a manner of makif. It never has any influence on him, though it's there. Milamayla, it's makif from above, it's encompassing from above. V'lachein, and therefore, Omer Rizal, our sages have said, Kol be asora shechinta shroya. He ends on a positive note. Any group of 10 people, no matter if they're the most hardened criminals in the world, no matter if they're the most, every minute and every breath and every smell of them was evil, the Shekhinah dwells on any group of 10, because the Shekhinah is there, waiting, hoping to be released. And then, Sunday, V'habenini, next chapter. All right. What do we got to say?
You mean 10 Jews or 10 people?
It's about 10 Jews. 10 Jews,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you have to say that there's something there also, in a non-Jew, because a non-Jew is also created by the spark of God, but it's different. One of my things that I'd like to study that I haven't had a chance to is really what's the difference. I mean, we know superficially the soul of a non-Jew is different than the soul, but what is it? And because if it weren't something that had an ability to attach itself to Kedusha, they wouldn't be obligated in the 7 mitzvahs, but it is different. Aviva.
So the Rasha Varalai, he has to know, in order to be a Rasha Varalai, it's like somebody who, like an Apikoros, has to know something to be an Apikoros, right?
Well, this Rasha Batova doesn't think that he's a non-believer. No, he just has no attachment at all. I mean, first of all, you don't have to be a Rasha to be an atheist, right? An atheist can do acts of kindness, but this starts there. I don't have any feeling of attachment or want to be attached to God at all. And on the contrary, my zest, my whole zest, at least that I'm conscious of, is in the evil. I'm the one-eyed patched pirate who lives to, Hamas, although they're Goyim, so raises Rivka's question. But someone who has zero conscious attachment of anything other than evil. That's who we're talking about. Elisheva? Christian.
I just wanted, yeah,
so.
thank you. I wanted to comment that every year when I learn this, it just like ideas floating in the air. And this year, because of my sudden intensive exposure to IFS, all of a sudden, right before this.
Suddenly you're getting into it. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm taking in everything that we're learning in a more concrete way, more like, oh, so a tzaddik is someone who mostly, and you're saying like somebody wouldn't be able to tell from the outside because their behavior, they go to work and they're nice to people and they're nice to their family members and they control their anger. So that's like, we can really see tzaddik virala, somebody who's mostly nice and sometimes he bursts out, or someone who bursts out only in his head. Like that's a Beinoni, is someone who actually maybe bursts out, or a Russia, I don't know yet.
No, the Beinoni we'll see. The Beinoni never bursts out in his head.
Right. But so a Russia like bursts out, like let's just do it with anger. So it's a matter of a tzaddik is never even angry. Like a tzaddik gamor, it never even enters his heart to be angry because he's so refined.
He's so refined, and he sees everything through the lens of godliness, that everything is from God.
And his exiles, like he took all the parts of him, let's say, that would naturally be a murderer, and he transformed it into like maybe a shochet. Like he mamish transformed the darkest parts of himself. That's a tzaddik gomor. Tzaddik she'eino gomor, he hasn't transformed the murderer, but it's so distant that it would never even occur. It doesn't remember that it's there because it's so exiled.
It has no conscious presence in his,
and it never even comes up. So, and the Russia is someone who, it's still coming up for him. It's still like he's still lashing out. I'm just like sounding out all the because until this year, these concepts were all just like floaty. Are you are you like, it's not just about the Torah and mitzvos. It's about like, you could have a tzaddik. So, I mean, probably the ultimate tzaddik gomer has to be connected to Torah mitzvos but you could have a guy that's maybe a tzaddik because he's so refined, he's so not angry.
We have an expression, tzadiki umas ha'olam. Right?
Wow.
Absolutely.
Someone who really works on himself and his consciousness and his subconsciousness and is so refined, that's a tzaddik. Wow.
Yeah. They can get to this level. Is it the same level? I don't know, but it's tzaddik. Tzaddik umas, and they get olam haba. They get. Yep. So there are degrees. Well, I think what little I touched on at IFS is a state of exile. There's states exile, right? He uses that. And there are various states of exile. And this is very common language to us, right? Exile and Geula. And so there's when he calls it, from what little I know, the Geula state is when you find your true Etzem Dika self. And then there's the exile state where you're not at all on the one hand, or not even or even a little bit not connected with the nitzutz, the spark of tzidkis, the spark of self-righteousness is within you. So it's a whole.
And all this the Alter Rebbe was talking about for hundreds of years. And we didn't realize that it meant like our private universe, our personal cells and universe. And
Perfect.
Yep. Good. Rivka, thank you. Rivka,
Yeah, I had just a quickie.
Okay.
When you're talking about evil and
Mm-hmm.
the Russia,
Mm-hmm.
and not being connected at all to godliness, you're not, but
or somewhat
I'm
connected. It's a sliding scale, less or more connected
okay.
to godliness.
So is the alternative like being totally self-absorbed, like what you're connected to is it's self?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking of a
yeah, sure.
narcissist.
Because Rishis, remember,
There's
Kedusha and
nothing
Rish,
else, but me.
yeah, narcissism, to the extent that one is completely absorbed in anything that's not Kedusha, that's called evil. And the completeness of it is the Rasha Baralad. And narcissism, I mean, I can't diagnose to what extent, what degree of completion narcissism is, but it's
using that
definitely
word lightly, but
yeah, it's on that scale. It's on the scale of being trapped in rishus, in self here, not the essential self, but in the ego. Narcissism is all about me, not about the real me. That's the problem. It's not about the etzem tzaddik that's within me. It's about the
I need.
Yeah, I gotta have. Right.
And
now,
narcissists have no sense of remorse.
Right, exactly. And on the flip side of that, there's the I gotta have Kedusha, right? Which also can be narcissistic because it's another thing, right? The quest for spirituality, right? The quest for more ecstatic experience by
It's how
becoming
I
close
feel,
to blah, 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 blah. It's still all about you, right?
But I know narcissists like who also do mitzvahs. So I don't think you could say that a narcissist is a Russia like.
No, wait a minute. No, we didn't say that. That the narcissistic quality is on the side of rishus, evil. It's involved, but there's a rush of a toivloi,
right?
And so there's one who has that kind of attachment, but at the same time is moving and involved in good things. Most of the people are rush of a toivloi. In other words, and the degree of goodness can be very great, but still the presence, to the extent there's some presence of ego-ness and non-release of oneself entirely to God, there's a sense of evil there. And it can be a very refined rush of a toivlai. But that's most people are on that scale. Either a lot of ego, investment in physical things, money, good looking, etc., a lot of, all you can imagine, or very little investment in that, and mostly invested in wanting to serve Hashem. But still there's that presence, and as long as that presence is there, you're called a rush of a taivloi, as we just
maybe
said.
the best chances a human could have is probably he's born as a Russia because that's just how it is. And then as life progresses, he could go up the steps and maybe by the end of his life be like a tzaddik.
Or at least halavai beinani, which will start on Sunday. Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Good Shabbos. See you Sunday in Mitzvah Hashem. Bye-bye.
Good job.
Good Shabbos.